Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jonah from Spotlight, and today we are going to be talking to Tiago. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. Thank you, Jonah.
Yes, so excited to talk to you. I'm going to do a little spiel and then get out of the way here, but just want to make sure everyone is in the right place, knows what the day is going to look like. So please hop in the comments like you already are doing. Let us know that you're here, you can hear and see us all right, where you're tuning in from, maybe something you're excited to learn today, how you heard about Tiago, how you heard about Spotlight. We love hearing all of those things. And feel free to drop any questions you have throughout the presentation into the chat. We are going to have a formal Q&A a little later in the event, but we also have a couple people from Tiago's team answering questions in there, and we'll save any pertinent questions for that Q&A. So use the chat, be active in there. We love seeing y'all there. We love having you all here. And last but not least, just if you have to get up away from the computer, if anything is moving fast, you have to leave at some point today, don't fret. All of this will be available in a replay. It'll be on YouTube, the Spotlight channel. It'll be on the Spotlight event page and also emailed to you along with the course offer, which we'll talk about a little later. And just to make sure that everyone is in the right place, like I said, we are talking to Tiago Forte, and we are going to be talking about building a second brain. Tiago, you're the master. You know all of this. I'm going to get out of the way so we can dive in.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Love it.
Thank you, Jonah. I appreciate it. Do we have any idea how many people are attending, by the way?
Yes. Well, we got just under 50 people here right now with us.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome, everyone. I can see the chat here, people calling in from all sorts of fascinating places. And welcome. This is the Q&A, the last Q&A before we close the doors forever on Cohort 14. Cohort 14 of Building a Second Brain, which closes its doors tomorrow in about 24, 36 hours. Okay. My job, my goal in this call is to answer every question, address every concern, assuage every doubt that you might have about the product that we offer, about the course, about the methodology, and most of all, about this upcoming cohort. So you can decide if you want to join or not. I want you to make that decision to join or not with complete 100% confidence and full information, since that is really what we are all about. So I'm going to start by sharing with you some things. We received a lot of questions before this even started. You all sent in a lot of really great questions. So we gathered those questions, organized them, distilled them. We used our very own methodology to kind of identify some of the most frequently asked questions. And I'm just going to try to answer those all up front. So then we can use the open Q&A at the end to really dive into the more, advanced or subtle or unusual issues. Okay. So first I want to speak to those of you who may not be familiar with what I do, with what we're offering. What is this thing called a second brain? Why would I want to build a second brain? What will change or what will happen to me? What are the benefits of building this thing called a second brain? So a lot of terms here, a lot of terminology, and I just want to introduce you to it. So it starts with an assertion that I have. Okay, when I first created this program in late 2016 was the first cohort. I was doing productivity coaching in San Francisco. That was my work. That was my business. I would go around to different tech companies and startups and meet in different cafes and go to offices. And what I started to notice working with people who were honestly high performers, people who were doing great, people who were effective at their jobs, was that there was a common factor underlying all of their complaints. Okay, underlying indecision, distraction, stress and anxiety, even something like procrastination. There was a root cause behind all these things that seemed isolated and disconnected, but weren't. And that root cause was information overload. Information overload which we've heard for years, right? We think we know what it is. We think we understand it. But the thing is, year after year after year, it's like this slowly rising tide, right? It just rises inexorably, invisibly almost in the background, making our life more and more complicated every single year. Okay, so this course exists, this thing called a second brain exists because we believe that most of the symptoms, the complaints that people have about productivity, about decision making, about creativity, about focus, about goal setting, about motivation, have one underlying cause, which is the amount of information you have to deal with. And the complexity of that information is this background all-consuming force that if you don't address it, no framework, no technique, and definitely no app is going to save you. Okay, that's my assertion, that if you do not address this root cause, it's not going to work. There's not going to be a way out when the flood tide of information is always getting worse over time. So what do I notice? What did I notice when I would sit down to work with people? Okay, I love just looking over people's shoulders and observing what they do. You know, I ask them to narrate, to tell me what's on their mind as they're checking their email, as they're organizing their to-do list, as they're organizing their files, as they're planning their projects, as they're setting goals. I just have them kind of tell me what they're thinking and how they're making decisions. And the interesting thing I notice is the current state. The current state of how people use technology to manage information is kind of what you see on the screen here. Okay. And this is actually not bad. Most people that I observe, they are using many dozens of different kinds of software, dozens and dozens of different platforms and different tools and different apps on various devices. Okay, we are familiar with technology. We know how to use technology. Okay, we're not living in the Stone Age. But what I notice is that there's just this missing little piece, this missing link, which is the information stored in all these different apps is just kind of random and chaotic. It's kind of just flowing from one random place to another. Something comes in by something comes in that you download and you email it to yourself, hoping that you'll find it later. Someone text messages you something and you add it to your calendar. You find a file on your desktop and you save it in a folder that you're not sure where you're going to find it later. It's like there is no intentionality, no system, no rules for where something should go, which creates this feeling, which is that brain at the center, that you're just sort of in this fog, in this cloud, right? Things are not progressing. The information, the knowledge, the wisdom that you're gathering is not building on itself. It's not improving or influencing anything. So when people say or hear, I'm going to build a second brain, I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is you have to change everything. Change all your habits, which we all know is like the hardest thing to do is change habits. When in fact, it's really just about doing many of the same behaviors, consuming much the same content you already are, taking the notes, writing things down the same way that you probably already are, interacting with social media and podcasts and content and web pages, like 95% of the same way that you're already doing, but changing that 5% to be a little more systematic and a little more intentional, where as you use all these different apps, you save the best 1 to 5% in a single, centralized, trusted, secure place that no one owns but you, that no one can touch but you, and that is your second brain. Okay? It is the single trusted place where your knowledge lives. So what I'm pointing to here is what is missing for most people, the vast majority of people, is not technology. Okay, let me just dispel this myth for you. If you think there's an app or some product that you're going to acquire that is going to fix this problem for you, it's just not going to happen. That I can promise you. What is missing is the behaviors. What is missing is the habits. What's missing is practices, these routine rituals that you bring to the table as a human. It's the human element that is missing from people's what's called PKM, personal knowledge management. So this is what we teach in the course. We will teach you how to use various apps for sure, but this is the part that you can only get in a live interactive experience. We're going to teach you the 4 steps of the creative process. Okay, this is the result. These 4 letters are the result of so many years of me studying creativity and creative practices going back millennia all the way to today from many different fields, writers, artists, songwriters, analysts, software engineers. There's these 4 steps that show up everywhere that are so foundational, we have them all in common. And those 4 steps are CODE, to capture content. You got to write it down. You have to save it in a place outside your head. You have to organize it. You have to add some kind of structure, some kind of order so that it's retrievable and it's accessible. You need to distill. This is the one that most people miss, actually. Doesn't matter how organized you are. If you only accumulate, it will eventually overwhelm you. You have to distill. You have to boil down your notes to their essence, to their most important points. And this is the part many people don't even know they want or know they need or know that it would be useful, but you have to express. Again, if you only accumulate, you just grow this. It's like hoarding. Your house fills up with stuff. If you never take anything out, nothing ever makes it out the door. It's eventually going to completely overwhelm you. You have to, the purpose of knowledge is to be expressed. The purpose of knowledge is to be shared, to be communicated or conveyed, to make an impact, a positive impact, hopefully, on something or someone that matters to you that is outside of you. Okay. Code is the backbone of our course, and we dedicate 1 week to each of these. A whole first week just on knowledge capture, a whole week on knowledge organization, a whole week on how to distill knowledge, and then a whole week on express, and then the 5th week is to kind of wrap everything together. This is our curriculum. What you gain when you combine, we're really combining 2 things, the technology, the apps on one side, and the human behaviors and habits on the other. When you put those together, when you combine them, you gain what I think of as a cognitive exoskeleton. I know this is a little bit nerdy. Think of it like an extension of your mind. The same way that an exoskeleton makes you stronger, makes you taller, makes you faster, makes you, have these superpowers and all these extra capabilities. What a second brain does is that same thing, but for your brain. Okay, it enhances your imagination. It improves your intellect when you're strong, but at the same time, when you're weak, when you make mistakes, when you're tired, when you're burnt out, it supports you and it catches you. That is the power of a cognitive exoskeleton. It's an external support system, both for when you're strong and for when you're weak. Okay, so that's big picture, what a second brain is, why you might want one. Now I want to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and get super practical, okay, and show you a little case study of what is possible when you have a second brain. And I'm going to show you one of my own projects. These are actual screenshots from my notes, from my second brain. Nothing here is faked. Nothing here is artificial. These are real from the field screenshots. Okay. So little background here. About 2 years ago in 2020, I decided I wanted to create a podcast. Okay. It had been something I'd been thinking about for a while, but I thought, you know what? The time has come. It's time to expand into podcasts. Now, I'd love to hear from you. I have my eyes here on the chat. How many of you have ever wanted to start a podcast or ever considered it? Had that as an idea that you might want to tackle someday? Okay. And if the answer is no, what is another creative project that you've had the idea for? Okay, a significant, concrete, creative project. What was it for you? I'd love to hear in the chat. Was it starting a blog? Was it starting an event series? Was it writing a book? Was it making a song or an album? Okay. These kind of concrete creative projects are the absolute focus of this course, because I believe that creative projects are basically some of the most important kind of milestones of progress in modern knowledge work, right? A creative project is a concrete thing that you can say, I made this. I researched it, I planned it, I built it. No one can argue with me. No one can take it away from me. I get the credit. I get the credit for having created this thing. You can put it on your resume, you can put it on your portfolio, on your website. That's the basis for getting a new job. It's the basis for starting a business. It's the basis for improving your community. Okay, so think about, just keep in mind as I show you this case study, what that creative project would be for you. So the first thing I do, which is what I always do to start anything new, is I did a search of my second brain. This is Evernote. You can see in the top right corner, I did just a search for podcasts. And what you see on the screen is what came up. Okay. Now, you can see up in the top left corner, there were 133 notes. And I want you to think about this for a sec. This to me is so mind-blowing. It feels like cheating. It feels like a cheat code, like when you're playing a video game and you put in that code and suddenly you have like unlimited life and unlimited power, is what it feels like to me. I didn't plan on this. Okay, I didn't spend days or weeks or months researching how to create a podcast. I didn't go, spend months thinking about it or planning or quote unquote working on it, which I think is how most people do creative projects. It instantaneously becomes this, what I call a heavy lift, this massive research project that consumes so much time and energy. And so much of the time, you never even get past the research, right? It becomes something that you researched one time. And before you even get far into the execution, the actual creation of that thing, life interrupts, other priorities come up, you get busy, you come down with a cold, life interrupts, right? And all that time that you put in, you basically have nothing to show for it. Okay, so what I'm showing you, what I'm trying to convey with this slide is what your second brain allows you to do is just keep little snippets of things. You can see on the screen, I had some notes from a course called PUP, Power Up Podcasting, that I had taken years ago. I had a little screenshot of some cover art for podcasts that I thought, these are some nice cover art images that I could borrow from. I have excerpts from email. I have excerpts from podcasts that I listen to. None of this was planned or pre-thought out. It's just me saving little nuggets of insight and little excerpts that I find interesting in my second brain, which means when I start to build my project, I don't go to Google. I don't go and do research. I only am working with content that is already in my second brain. That is the power. I start day one with building and creating. So I spent one day. Okay, one day to go through. I don't think I went through 133 notes. I think I went through maybe 20 or 30. And by the time I had picked the bits and pieces from 20 or 30 notes that I wanted to use, I had everything I needed. Right? That's the 80-20. The 80-20 was found in just 20 to 30 notes. So on day two, I created an outline, which is what you see on the left. Okay, I just pulled from existing notes the points that I wanted to cover, the subjects I wanted to talk about, with a few sub-bullet points, with a few small details, which of course is all synced to my iPad because Evernote syncs between all your different devices. Okay, so I had my outline open in front of me there on the left. On the right is me in front of a microphone. I was with a friend actually who's visiting me. He's not shown in the photos, but he's the one taking the photo. And on day two, we sat down and over about 4 or 5 hours recorded together the entire first season of my podcast. 10 episodes. Okay, and you guys, I want you to just get, this wasn't like a supernatural miracle. This is just me using stuff that I've collected. What would be possible for you if that creative project that you have in mind could be done, or at least the first version, the first prototype, in 2 days or 3 days or 1 week? Think about the impact that has. Think about the impact that would have on other people, on you, your career, your business. It took a few more days to edit those audio recordings, upload them. I think maybe a week and a half total for the project. But a week and a half after having this idea, I had the Building a Second Brain podcast, which now 2 years later has been listened to over 300,000 times. I don't even know how to calculate the ROI, the return on investment, on a week and a half long project that impacts over 300,000 people. And this is the kind of experience that I want for you. This is the kind of insane leverage that I want you to taste for yourself. What I notice, and again, I'm sort of an anthropologist for people's creative lives. I would bet that you have on your computer right now 5 to 6 figures of knowledge just sitting there. I'm sure of it. 5 to 6 figures worth of knowledge and insights and lessons learned and things you learned from failures and victories and case studies, projects you've worked on, clients you've worked with. Think about the documents sitting in your documents folder. Think about the insights sitting in your email inbox, sitting in your browser bookmarks, sitting on your desktop in your downloads folder, sitting in the notes app on your phone. I mean, you could never have access to the internet ever again, and you would have an immense value worth of knowledge just in your digital world at this very moment. But what I notice is for most people is it's a knowledge jungle, right? There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no order. And so it's basically an impenetrable jungle, right? There's probably great stuff in there, right? Jungles are pretty cool. There's lots of fascinating things, but it's impenetrable, which means it might as well not exist. It's not accessible. It's not something that you can capitalize on. Okay. So imagine if that same material, once again, you don't need to go and find all these new things. If just the insights that exist right now in your digital world were something more like a personal knowledge library. Okay, imagine what it would mean to you to take a stroll through the corridors of your own mind. Just like a library, peaceful, quiet, orderly, but not rigid, right? Like a library is organized, but it's not restrictive. It's not about conformity. It's about wandering. You wander through the corridors of your mind and you see what strikes you. You see what resonates with you, whether it was written last year or 1,000 years ago. Makes no difference. This is what we are creating with the second brain. So there is a ton of content on the internet now about this subject, which is formally called PKM, Personal Knowledge Management. So I want to start talking about the course now. What is our role in all this? What is the unique thing that our team is bringing to the PKM landscape? Comes down to this question. It really comes down to customization. Okay, you can watch endless YouTube videos. Go on YouTube. There's a lifetime of content. You can go on Twitter. You can go on Facebook. You can go and find endless content on how to use various note-taking apps, how to organize your files, how to be more productive. But what is unique about our course and the specific way that we do it, which is not pre-recorded? I'm not just going to dump on you 100 hours, this massive library of static, fixed, pre-recorded content for you to sit by yourself at your computer and watch on your own. That has never worked for me personally. I personally never finished a self-paced course, right? Like I'm a fairly disciplined person, and not once have I been able to muster up the self-discipline to finish all the way to the end a self-paced course. We teach this live. It is live. Every cohort, we don't know what's going to happen, right? It depends on the personalities of the people in the cohort. It's more like a conference or like a music festival or like a safari to a different country. It's quite dynamic and serendipitous and unexpected. And what that allows us to do, the reason we do it live, which is a lot of work and kind of complicated for us to deliver, is that in a live experience, you get to customize what you're learning. You get to really choose your own adventure. Okay, a second brain is a personal thing. It's not something you can just download an app or just mimic someone else's system. You have to personalize it for yourself. And that's what a live program allows you to do. as I mentioned before, we spend a whole week on knowledge capture. You're going to see dozens of different tools, not just by me, by the way. I think the way that I do a second brain applies to maybe 10 or 20% of people. And that's why we have 12 alumni mentors. Alumni mentors are graduates of this course that we recruited and hired and trained to come back and coach other new students through the same program. So often people come in and they go, Tiago's approach doesn't make any sense to me, but Cliff's or Gia's or Carrie's, now that one works for me, right? So you're actually learning from me and the Forte Lab staff, plus 12 alumni mentors, plus 16 moderators who are active on the online discussion forum. We have a core staff of over 40 people that you're going to be learning from, not just me. Okay, we spend a whole week on organizing. This is my Para method, which we have a blog post that you can check out on the blog about Para. It's a action-based system for organizing notes, right? You're not creating an archival system. You're not creating a storage system. You're creating a production system. This is for people who want to make things out of their knowledge, to share their knowledge, not just create a giant, a secret archive that no one ever sees. We spend a whole week on Distill, how to design notes, the actual content of notes, to be visible using things like titles, bolding and highlighting, tags, keeping original links so you know where it came from, even things like date created and date modified, to make notes instantly accessible, where you can just look at it and instantly see what it's about and whether it's relevant. And finally, we spent a whole week on Express. And this, again, this is the part, a lot of people come in thinking they're not interested in this. Let me try to convince you. Let me show you what's possible with Express. And it can look many different ways. It might be seeing. Did you know even the decision of what to see, what to pay attention to, what to note down is a creative act? You're expressing your values. You're expressing your priorities, your principles, your goals through even the decision of what to note down. It could be writing. Right? Writing is a super accessible way to express your thoughts. It could be drawing. Some people are very visual, diagrams, mind maps, sketches, paintings. It could be communicating, giving speeches, giving presentations. It could be producing. Maybe you want to make a product or a piece of content or develop a service or start a business. And even selling, being an entrepreneur, being a salesperson, pitching things, proposing things is itself an act of creative expression. Okay, so I'm going to expand the definition of what it means to be a creator, what it means to be a maker in this modern world that every single one of us have access to digital creation tools. We have many questions, I know, about the schedule. This is a summary. So we're going to run 5 weeks from April 12th, which is the kickoff, to May 10th, which is the final session. Okay. The live sessions with me, which are kind of the one call that everyone in the cohort comes together in one place, which is very exciting. The energy of those Zoom calls is just something you can't even imagine. Having, upward of 1,000 people, all dedicated, all aligned on the same goal. Everyone who actually wants to be there and is excited to be there is just an unforgettable experience. Those live sessions take place from 8 to 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And you can see some of the subjects of the lessons down at the bottom. Many of the questions that we got are also about how much time you'll spend. So let me kind of give you some insight into that. The foundation is actually pre-recorded lessons. These are short. As I said, I'm not going to give you 100 hours. I think total we have maybe 30 to 40 minutes per week of either 1 or 2 pre-recorded lessons. They're recorded by me. It's me delivering kind of like the essential pillars of building a second brain. You can watch them on 1.5x speed or 2x speed and get it done in 15 or 20 minutes. These are captioned. So you can see what is being written at the bottom of the screen. They're chaptered, so you can jump to different sections. You can even search the captions. So if you want to go back and visit a particular place in one video where I mentioned a term, you can go in and search the captions and be taken right to that timestamp in the video. So that takes, I put an hour just in case you want to stop and rewind and rewatch, but at most 1 hour per week. Second is the live sessions with me, which I think are pretty neat. That's 90 minutes on Tuesday mornings, Pacific time. Okay, so that's another 90 minutes. Then we have mentor sessions. So as I said, we have 12 alumni mentors, each hosting their own 1-hour call once a week. So I'm telling you, you can't attend them all. Don't even try. That's not a good idea. You're going to want to pick and choose. We're going to give you some recommendations. We're actually going to recommend which mentor you should go with based on which app you're using and based on the creative medium that you're using to express your ideas. Okay, so I put 3 hours per week just in case you want to go to 3 of them. You could also go to 2. You could also go to 1. But I highly recommend attending at least one mentor session, and they're scheduled 7 days a week across all time zones. So no matter where you live, you can attend at least around half of them. And then once again, they're all recorded. So even if it's at a time zone you can't make, you can always go back and watch the recordings of all the mentor sessions. And finally, last but very much not least, is the student community. Honestly, this is kind of like the secret of all this. We have a private learning community of over 5,000 people who've taken this course. Okay, I don't know of another community dedicated to this subject of that size and of this quality anywhere in the world. I really don't. Okay, go in there and you'll find, 10 times more than is actually in the curriculum itself, with people sharing case studies and doing demos and talking about the experiments they've run and sharing how they've applied second brain techniques. It's every time I go in there, I learn more, I think, from the student discussion community than I think I even teach in this program. And I put 2 hours per week. So we're looking at something around, let's say, 6 to 10 hours. Okay. And the reason I want to highlight that is it's significant. Okay. This isn't a casual, 15 minutes a week. This is an intensive transformational program. We design everything with this filter of, is this going to radically change people's lives? That's the standard that we're going for. We're not here to give you a little tiny boost in your productivity. We're not here to give you some productivity tips. We're here to take you from 0 to 1, a complete revolution in what you're able to do with less time, to do more with less. Many of the questions that we received had to do with outcomes. What happens to people in a program like this one? I'll share one of the stories, which is from Doug von Cohort. I think he was in cohort 5 or 6. And a couple months after the course, he wrote me without, just spontaneously. And he said, in the 2 months since starting, I've produced 3 blog posts, planned 3 backpacking trips, decluttered my room, created an enterprise workshop, and got admitted into a developer conference, all using the same system. I'm living the para lifestyle now, and I'm never going back. This way lies not just productivity, but happiness and ease of mind. I started with no experience with GTD. GTD is this other productivity framework that I talk about quite frequently. I didn't understand constraints. I never used a note-taking tool. Take this course to start to feel agency in the world of infinite information and filter failure. Okay. And then there's so many stories. We don't really have time to talk about them in depth, but we have a little video for you, which I'm going to ask Jonah to play right now.
There's a lot of things that seem to always slip through the cracks, things that I would forget.
What I really wasn't good at was taking that information and actually turning it into something useful down the line.
I was intrigued enough, and after listening to a few of his videos, realized that there is quite a lot that I could be doing better.
I was looking for a better system of organizing myself and becoming more effective.
Before I took this class, I really didn't understand how to actively consume information in a meaningful way.
I really realized how critical it was to have a system for managing your work, improve your productivity, to stay sane.
Really, the thing that I took away from this more than anything was this kind of internalized principle of simplicity.
And I am much, much more conscious of what I capture and file away.
I developed a more trustworthy system for easily producing creative output.
I learned about new tools and systems for personal knowledge management.
Even though I was in a depressive slump and having a really hard time engaging with my work at the level that I wanted to, I hadn't actually dropped any balls. I realized that that's really the value of a good system, is that it's a system that's designed to support you on your worst days.
I'm not fiddling with hierarchies. I'm not fiddling with trying to find the right place to put a file or where to find something. Everything is just where I expect it to be. and it's really helped me organize my life.
Also, the relationships, self-learning, and group accountability offered through the course I found extremely valuable.
I was really impressed about the quality of Tiago's interaction. It seemed as if he was talking to each person individually.
Building a second brain is more than buying a ticket to one experience, but truly getting admission to a lifelong community. That experience to me is just priceless.
There's like no better group or, mentor team or community you could find than this one to go through all that. Everyone was amazing and supportive and super creative and brilliant. An awesome team to be a part of.
Hope that was interesting to just hear from other students. A while back we actually polled our alumni community, and we asked them what were the biggest benefits that they had, right? In many cases, these were graduates that had taken it years in the past. And these were the 8 that were the most common answers. Consistently moving projects and goals to completion. What would it mean to create that creative project in 2 weeks instead of 2 years or 2 months? Establish a process that helps you reliably produce creative output. Turn personal knowledge into new income and new opportunities. Improving the quality of your thinking through unexpected connections. Reducing stress, fear of missing out, and information overload. Demonstrating expertise and credibility. A lot of people join this program when they're starting a new job or thinking of starting a new job, or even going on a new career or starting a business or considering starting a business. Unlocking the full value of the wealth of learning resources. So all the other courses you take, all the other YouTube videos you watch, all the other content you consume. One of my favorite comments ever back from Cohort, I think 2, was this guy named Michael. And he said, this is the course I should have taken before all those other courses. Because this would have given me the note-taking system to actually preserve and benefit from all the lessons that I've taken across so many different courses. And finally, this is my favorite these days, that I've become a homeowner and a husband and a parent, which is being able to turn work off. Having a place, it's like hitting save game in a video game. If I'm tired, right, I need to step away and spend time with my family, I can just offload into a place that I trust. So when I come back, it's waiting for me just as I left it. Let's talk about what's included. A lot of questions were along these lines. So these are sort of the foundational pieces. 5 interactive live sessions with me. As I said, the size of these is an asset. There is just simply, even after 13 cohorts, I walk away from these calls on such a high. It's like my goosebumps on the hair standing up on my arm, because there isn't another venue, even for me in my life, where I get the concentrated kind of energy and attention of hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world, all dedicated to mastering this domain of their lives. Okay, there's 7, pretty short. They're all like 10 to 20 minutes, studio quality, super high quality, ultra high definition, studio quality audio, just like you're hearing now, video lessons. Lifetime access to a private online community. We don't let anyone in. You have to have taken the course. Okay, so the average quality of participant is extremely high. Access to live alumni mentor workshops. These are people that are thought leaders and experts in their own right. They have their own following. They have their own practice. In many cases, this is the only way to work with them. The Second Brain Resource Vault. The Second Brain Resource Vault is like an extended library of advanced tutorials, workshops I've done in the past, many of the bonuses from previous cohorts we put into the Resource Vault for a sort of like extended library of content if you have more time. And finally, this is the first time we're doing this, lifetime access to our blog, which is called Praxis. The blog has close to 1 million words on it. I think close to 100 paywalled articles, which is some of my most in-depth, super detailed case studies, demonstrations, series, all of which you will have access to, not just for past content and present content, but any content in the future that I put out that's paywalled. You never have to worry about having access to it. You will have access to it forever. But wait, there's more. There's always more, right? We actually have, and this is just, I still kind of can't believe this, but we have 10 bonuses. Okay, every cohort, we come up with a list of bonuses. We look at the feedback from the previous cohort. We just make a list of all the challenges that people had, and we just add a whole nother batch of new features to address all the most important problems that people have. Okay, so recently we sat down, we made a big list of everything we could offer, and then I looked at the list and said, you know what, let's just do it all. Let's hold nothing back. Let us just do every single bonus we can think of. So let me tell you briefly what those are. First, my book, which is also called Building a Second Brain, which will be released officially June 14th in the US and the UK. We're going to send, I still can't believe we're doing this, but we're going to send each and every student a signed hardcover first edition of the book. And you're going to get it before anyone else in the world. Okay, depending on where you live in the world, you'll get it at least 1 or 2 weeks before the official release date on June 14th. Okay, we're going to do Tech Week. This is also something we've never done before. We noticed a lot of people have real difficulty choosing their note-taking app, right? We want you to have that choice made before the cohort starts so you can benefit the most. And so we're adding a whole week before those 5 weeks that we're calling Tech Week, where we're going to take you through the process that we've created to figure out what we call your note-taking personality. And there's 3 of them: librarian, gardener, and architect, which you see on the screen. So that on April 12th, on the very first live session, you know for sure, this is the note-taking app for me. I made the right choice. I can commit to it. I can invest in it without having any doubt about your choice. Third, we're going to give you a year of the most important second brain app, which is called Readwise. Readwise has become this indispensable kind of companion to your second brain. And what it does is it completely automates the process of pulling content from all the different places where you consume it back into your digital notes. Okay, we're going to give you, we've begun to recommend and reference Readwise so often that we've decided to give every single student across all 3 tiers a full year of the highest level, premium level access, so that every time we recommend you use it, you can give it a try. You can try out all the features that it has for a full year without any risk. We're going to take on that risk for you. Number 4, this is again something I've never done before. In our feedback surveys, we've seen that demonstrations of my own notes are some of the things that people value the most. And so I'm going to record a super in-depth, detailed, kind of behind-the-scenes walkthrough of my second brain, which is across a number of apps, for example, Readwise, Evernote, Obsidian, and even Twitter, and how I take content from consuming it on one end all the way into turning it into my own ideas. Something I've never done before that we're going to be sharing with all of you. Number 5, this is just kind of crazy. I cannot believe we're doing this, but number 5 is the favorite book vault. I'm going to share with you a collection of 20, my notes on 20 of the most important books in my life. Books that have most impacted and influenced my thinking and my work. And of course, I'm going to share with you not just these are the books, but my full notes in exactly the digital note-taking format that I recommend you use. Okay, so you'll have 20 models of what a well-distilled, a well-designed note looks like from my own second brain collection. Number 6, I have many of my best articles and essays from the blog packaged and curated into a series of 4 ebooks. Okay, these are available on Amazon Kindle. Whoa. Oh, there we go. Oops, sorry. Okay, here we go. These are packaged onto Amazon Kindle. We're actually going to share them with you in EPUB format, a completely open format, so you can download them and read them and highlight and annotate them on any e-reader app. And the reason we do this is basically it's not so nice to read a multi-thousand word piece in a web browser or on a device or in a browser window. And so with an ebook, it's like a distraction-free reading environment where you can really get into the ideas in a kind of an environment that's designed for long-form reading. Number 7, we're going to try something new, which is alumni sprints. Okay, one of the most common complaints that we receive at the end of the 5 weeks is we want to keep going. Why end? Why bring it to a close? So a few of our alumni mentors have offered to run a series of sort of like follow-up programs, follow-up 1-week sprints after the end of the 5 weeks on different kind of more advanced or more subtle topics that really make more sense once you have a second brain, right? So think of it like, if this is the bachelor's degree or the master's degree, the alumni sprints are like the PhD or the postdoc work of your second brain. Number 8, we're going to match you. So we've noticed that the choice of mentors can be a little overwhelming. There's so many of them. And so we're going to recommend 1 or 2 of them for you based on your note-taking app of choice and based on your profession in creative medium. Okay, you're free to attend any of them, but we're going to kind of give you like a recommended path. Number 9, I'm going to do a super in-depth case study on what it's taken, what it's looked like, what I've learned, and how I use my second brain to launch the Building a Second Brain book to the world. I've learned a tremendous amount about how to write a book and get it published, with some lessons that actually apply way beyond writing books. They really apply to any large-scale, long-term creative project. And so I'm really going to share with you behind the scenes of what that looks like and what I've learned. As I said, also lifetime access to paywall blog posts, past, present, and future. So anything that I refer to from anything in my body of work, you'll be able to head over to the blog and have access to everything. This is a summary of the bonuses, just so you have them all in one place. I see here in the chat, there's questions about the tiers. So let's get into that. So there's 3 editions of this program, 3 tiers. Okay. Each one is a different price and gives you a different level of access, different set of features. The first one is the Essential Edition. Okay. And I call this the Essential Edition because it's everything that you need. It's everything that you need. It's like need to know basis. Okay. If you only want the stuff that is essential to build a second brain, Essential Edition is for you. And it has all those things on the screen that we've already talked about. $1,500. No, there's no gimmicks. There's no tricks. It's not $14.99, not $14.97, $14.96.97. Like all these, I really hate all these, psychological tricks that people use. No, it's a one-time, upfront, simple payment of $1,500 US dollars, and you are inside the program and the community forever. The second tier is the Premium Edition. So you get everything included in the Essential Edition, plus the ability, the option to join any future cohort. So it's lifetime access, not just to the curriculum, but to these live programs, these live experiences. You get 1 additional live Q&A call per week with me. That's Premium Edition students only. It's just another hour or to hour and a half where it's unstructured open Q&A for me to answer any questions. Plus a series of advanced tutorials and exclusive expert interviews that, again, are just like more advanced, more nuanced, more subtle for those of you that want to go deeper into, in this case, the expert interviews are like prolific writers, academics, software engineers, founders who are using their second brains to do really amazing things in the world. And then finally, we have the Executive Edition. This is limited enrollment. We have 12 spots total. And what this adds on top of the previous 2 editions is a 60-minute one-on-one coaching call with me, one-on-one, just you and I. A 3rd group coaching session with me each of the 5 weeks of the cohort with me and the other executive students. And also priority support. So if you have any question about anything, about how to join calls, about the curriculum, about the subject matter, you will be first in line for our support. This is the website to buy, buildingasecondbrain.com/course. Jonah, I believe you can also drop a link in the chat that people can click directly. This is the screen that you're going to see. It's a simple, very straightforward checkout. We offer a few different guarantees. One is 30 days money back. Okay, so it's no questions asked. There's no special requirements. We're not going to like hide the email. We're not going to put all these, kind of artificial obstacles in your way. If 30 days from purchase, so it's not from the start of the cohort, but 30 days from your purchase date, you decide this is not for you, you decide that you did not get the return that you're looking for, just ask us and we'll be happy to give you your money back. And then, of course, lifetime updates across all 3 editions to future curriculum updates, which we come out with twice a year before each cohort. So you'll have access to all those. And of course, the community. We don't revoke access. We don't limit it. Once you're inside forever. Really, I think of building a second brain as a community first and foremost that happens to have a course attached. And so once you're inside and you've made the investment and you've graduated, we want you to stick around. And so you'll have lifetime access to the community. And enrollment closes tomorrow night, midnight Eastern time. Okay, don't be late. Put a reminder on your calendar. The doors will close. We will actually start on a certain date. And you can enroll up to midnight on Wednesday, tomorrow, March 30th. And that's it.
Tiago, thank you so much. I love so much what you've done, because I was someone who didn't go to college, but I pursued out of school learning like crazy. And I have all these tiny little notebooks with notes, and it's a nightmare to call on the information I know.
Yeah.
So to take that and put it into a system where you can actually call it up and use it. Also, I'm a podcast producer, and the fact that you did a podcast in a week is insane. That's that's such a testament. But thank you everyone so much who's here and watching and being active. Please hop in the chat. We got quite a while more with Tiago to answer any questions you might have. And Tiago, we already had a couple questions. So if you're ready, we can just start diving in.
Let's do it.
Love it. We had a couple questions more geared kind of towards the course. And Tina had one. How is the course different from your book that is coming out?
Yeah, great question. So it's definitely the same material. The book is basically like me distilling actually everything that we learned from 5 years and 13 cohorts down to the parts that don't change. Right? Because this is the thing with the book. This isn't like a self-published ebook that, you write it today and like tomorrow you upload it on Amazon and then the next day it's available, right?
Right.
It's taken, and we'll talk about this when I do the in-depth case study. It's been a 3.5-year project to get this book published. Like, if you can imagine, it's a big project, which means everything in there is timeless, which is what you need to do for a book. So I would say the book is like what doesn't change, these sort of timeless creative principles. So same content, but here's what I would say the course adds. A number of things. The interactivity, right? When you're reading a book, you have a question. Sorry, unless
Right.
you can just think about it, right? You just have what's printed on the page. Whereas so much of the way that humans learn is through a give and take, right? You read something, you ask a question, and then I give a different perspective, and then you give a different perspective. It's this exchange of value in both directions. You don't get the customization, right? The book is sort of like the one-size-fits-all version. I have to do it that way, But in a course, I'll often like interact and talk with someone like this, and this is why we use Zoom, so we can talk. I can talk to people. They'll say, "Oh, but I'm X. I have this circumstance, this situation." And I go, "Oh, so everything I just said, throw it out the window. You need to take this other completely different path." I can't do that in a book. Right? You don't get the community in a book. You don't get to see all these different definitions of success, all these different examples of how you can do it. And finally, you don't get the recent stuff, right? Like, I finalized the manuscript about 6 months ago. So much has happened in just 6 months, right? Whole new platforms have come out. Existing platforms have come out with new features. So like, we can add those new updates to the course because we're creating it now, but the book is that ship has sailed.
Right.
So I'd say the two are very complementary, which is why that we're giving everyone who enrolls in the course a book.
Well, and it really sounds, and that's why you've chosen to do it a cohort course and like that. It sounds like the community is such a huge part of the learning experience. So I imagine also as the tech world changes and updates, the community is sharing like, "Hey, this works for me now. Have you seen this function in Notion?" Like, that seems like a really powerful place to continue learning.
That's such a great observation, Joan. And that really is what it is. It's funny. I think of the community, it's like a distributed R&D thing, right? Like this world of knowledge management, and not even to mention productivity in general, no one can pay attention to more than like 1% of it. It's impossible. It's my job. It's my job to pay attention to it. And I'm like, wow, I can pay attention to maybe like 0.05%. Right. So part of the community is about curation, right? Like you need these people, each of which is paying attention to one little corner of the productivity universe, to go and find out things, and then they bring it back to us. So when I go on the discussion forum, I just go down the feed, and it's just like I'm getting a curated feed of all the most interesting things happening, which is just a time saver, right? Like just the sheer time and energy that saves is a tremendous benefit, I think.
Yeah. I love it. I'm just going to keep firing because we're getting so many questions here. So I want to, and this one's putting you a little on the spot, but I love asking course creators this because it's so valuable to know. User was asking, Tiago and team, why is this course that expensive? So why do you price it the way you do? And you also, I just want to say, you're putting a lot of time into making sure that people who sign up are fit for it.
Yeah.
So that's part of it, I imagine. But can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question that I love. I love this question because it's someone who's thinking about one of my favorite topics, which we'll talk a lot about, which is ROI, like return on investment. Okay. And whoever asked that, let's like learn from this question. You guys have to think in terms of ROI. Okay. Every time, not just of money, by the way, but also of your attention. Right? What is the return? When you watch that 30-minute video, that 30-minute YouTube video about some productivity tip, what was the return on that investment? When you read that book, what was the return? When you took that course, what was the return? Like, I really want you to think like an investor, where you're like, if you put money into something, or in our case, attention, and you get nothing back, that's a problem.
Right.
Like your attention has value. Your attention, I mean, look at these billion-dollar tech companies. Why are they billion-dollar companies? Because they have the most precious asset in the world. Your attention, yours, is the most valuable resource on this planet, right? So what I would really think about when you think about the return, and I want you to get the highest possible return on this course. That is my goal for you, okay? You really want to think about the time that it's going to save you, right? Really perform, like this is so powerful. Perform this thought experiment. I've even done this like on an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. First line, write out your hourly rate. What is your attention worth, right? And use conservative numbers, right? What you make at your job, if you calculate it on a per hour basis, what you charge as a contractor or consultant or coach or whatever, what you would charge if someone were to hire you, right? Like come up with a number. Okay. And then just ask yourself, with that number in mind, how many hours would it take you to replicate and really be honest with yourself and with me? What would it take you to replicate to have the same results as a course like this one, where you have 40 people who have spent collectively probably like 300 years or something, all making mistakes, trial and error, trying and failing, experimenting with different apps, teaching other people, right? Like just ask yourself, what is the accumulated value to you of a teaching staff of 40 people who all are dedicated and committed to making you win and making you succeed? And what is the value of getting that outcome, having a second brain and all the benefits that it brings, not in 5 months, 5 years, 50 years, or whatever it would take, but 5 weeks. Like the thing you're really purchasing, this is what I would say, is accountability. Okay. If you have zero problem with accountability, like your self-discipline and you're infinitely self-directed, you don't need this program.
Right. Okay. You're already there, right?
You're fine. Just the content is out there. There's amazing YouTube videos. There's free content on my blog. You're fine. But if you're like me and you need, like, the main thing you need in life is like forcing functions, are sometimes called. Like you need someone to create a path for you. You need someone to create a container that almost like forces you to just proceed step by step by step. Okay. And if $1,500 is worth what is that? 5, 10, 20 hours of your time. If that is worth it, join us. If it's not, don't. Like really, just be completely practical, be completely conservative, and only join if the return on investment of joining a program like this one is going to be more than doing it by yourself.
Right.
What I would say.
Well, and I could say, having run a small business, it would be a lot more expensive to hire a team of 40 people to help you develop a second brain than to be part of it. But yeah, I love your honesty with that, because a lot of people wonder kind of how courses are valued and everything. And I also really appreciate you calling out time as an investment, because I think we're so casual with our time, where we put it and our attention. But just really appreciate how you answer that. Gonna just keep firing down here. We had quite a few questions about the different tiers of courses. So I'm gonna try and kind of smash these into a few. Chad was just saying right off the bat that that is the only question they have, is deciding which one. And then a few people were asking if the Essential Edition lets us have access to the live access of the future cohorts, or doesn't let you have access. Can you still get the course updates? So do you get updates if you're not in the other higher tiers?
You do. You do.
Love it.
The only difference, so there's really 4 things that you have lifetime access to at the premium edition, and then 3 at essential. So the curriculum updates, everyone gets lifetime access. The student community, everyone gets lifetime access. The blog and all the paywall articles, everyone gets lifetime access. The only thing that you have to join premium edition for is to actually join the actual live Zoom calls and participate like live in real time. That's the only difference.
Love it. And then a few more kind of questions within that. What do you consider advanced tutorials from the premium edition?
Yeah, good question. So it's funny because we're always trying to not give you TMI, right? Like it'd be very ironic if you join a course because you're overwhelmed with information and we're like, information more.
Right.
Right? So we really try to limit the content, right? Like I personally, I join these courses that they're like 150 plus hours of content. I'm like, oh my God, I do not have time for this. I don't want content for content's sake.
Right.
Right. So that's why like the pre-recorded lessons, we have 1 or 2 a week, but it's like 10 minutes, like 15 minutes. And so I've completely, advanced tutorials. So what I try to do is things that are not absolutely need to know, we don't put in the main curriculum. We put them either in the Second Brain Vault, which is like the extended library, right?
Mhm.
Or we put them in the premium edition. So Stephen, maybe you can actually paste in the chat. Stephen is our course director. He's joining us behind the scenes here. Maybe you could look up and copy and paste into the chat the actual topics. I can't remember offhand, but something specific like how to create slides, right? Like a lot of people like the slides that I put up. And those are another example that I only use existing content. Like I can create a slide deck in like minutes. It's just like easy, right? And so that is a topic that a lot of people want to know about, but it's like not need to know, right? Like you don't need to know how to rapidly assemble slides. And so we put that in as an advanced tutorial in the premium edition.
So I'll tag on here. Is the premium edition a little more geared to people who are going to use these skills for business and stuff like that? Or are those additional tools just great tools anyhow? Like the person taking the premium, what's that ideal kind of someone who's ready to go, but how are they getting the return on their investment as far as their intention?
Yeah, great question. So the distinction I would say is the essential edition is designed for everyone, right? Like I constantly ask, is this something that like a 9th grader could use, like a 6th grader, like a kid, something that is about general productivity, right? That I think every professional needs to know. And what we tend to put in the premium edition is people who are writers or content creators, right? Which I consider advanced, right? Like most people are not online personalities. They're not building a following, right? So that to me is advanced. You have a blog, you have a podcast, you have an online course, you have something that some sort of public body of work that you're building. That would go in the premium edition. And then also, like you said, business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders. Like I think I have one advanced tutorial using a second brain to do business development, right? To organize your client data, all the info. Like having clients is so much to keep track of. Every single client has like its whole own file, right?
Right.
So that is, I think I did like a 2-hour tutorial on that, but that is something like most people don't have to do business development in their job, right? So I really try to keep essential for everyone. Premium is for like founders, entrepreneurs, content creators, writers, thought leaders, experts, people who are trying to monetize or promote or distribute their content, usually through the internet.
Love it. I appreciate you kind of outlining that intention there. Awesome. I'm gonna move on to some questions less like about the course itself, but I loved this one when it came in. And a few people asked this. What is your advice to people that have a system that works already?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Everyone has a system that works. Like really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're a functioning adult, right? Like it's very funny. It's like,
To varying degrees, depending
yes.
on the day.
It-
But yeah.
yeah, maybe I shouldn't assume, but it's really funny because I think so. If you come in with the mindset, I am a basket case, I know nothing, I'm a complete screw up. That first of all is just not true, right? Like in all of humanity, everyone in this call, I guarantee, is in the top 5% of most productive, effective, capable people, if not the 1%, if not the 0.1%, right? For you to even have a computer, know how to use the internet, get on this call and know what's going on, you are part of the elite. Like, honestly, you are part of the elite. And it's this funny thing where often it's like people who are actually pretty productive take productivity courses. People who know how to write take writing courses. People who are good at organizing take organizing courses. We tend to like the more we know about a subject, the more that we realize we don't know. And so I think this is called like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where the very thing that you know the most, you think you don't know the most. And so you sort of like, you actually undervalue yourself. You don't give yourself the credit of what you already do and already know. And so a lot of my job is like, you are already managing information. You are already capturing, organizing, distilling, and expressing content all day long, every day. It's just the degree. It's just turning up the dial a little bit in some cases. And people are shocked how little it takes, right? Just having a few rules of thumb. When I listen to a podcast, save the excerpts there. When I highlight an ebook, export them there. When I process an email, archive instead of just going on to the next. These like little simplistic rules can revolutionize your relationship to the digital content in your life. So, it's funny because I say this is a transformational, revolutionary program, but that doesn't mean the change in your behavior has to be transformational and revolutionary. It's small changes that have outsized results.
I love that way of thinking. Like it's just taking notes along the way. That leads perfectly though into this next question Mark was asking, which is because it seems like a lot of your platform is utilizing the technology. And Mark was asking, what is your view on digital dementia, where we outsource our brains to our smart devices and being very reliant on it?
I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
Just right. Love it. So, but I'm curious. I kind of want to tag on to this question because I think if there's no intention, you can fall into that digital dementia space. But when you're making these adjustments and making the act of using those tools to recall and to actually make stuff happen, not just rely on it like, oh, the tech will take care of it. Have you also just noticed your ability to recall, like your actual ability to, even in just knowing what to search for or knowing how to access your second brain? I imagine you do find an increase in the tech of your own self as well.
Yeah, this is great. So let me answer this a couple different ways. So first, I'm all in on digital note taking. And this is a difference. I can't even really think of more than a couple people that are. Most books that you read, there's this whole movement of like abstaining from technology, right? Like, oh no, like technology is bad. It is fragmenting our attention and it's making us worse people. And you should really turn it off and give it away and step back from it. And I understand it. I understand that is a natural, healthy reaction to technology invading like every part of our lives. But I'm like, okay, technology is not inherently bad. There's no way that it's inherently bad. In fact, I think we sort of don't see the positive sides, right? It's like something we're so used to. It's like when you're flying in a plane, over the ocean, and you're like, this seat is uncomfortable. You're flying in a chair over the ocean. You're going to Europe in like a few hours. Like, what do you mean, right? It's like this curse. It's like the blessing has turned into a curse somehow.
Yeah.
Or it's like the internet is the greatest cultural renaissance, is the cultural renaissance of our time. You can't step back. You're going to miss so much knowledge, so much connection and community, so much insight if you step back from the internet, right? So I am against all the writers and thinkers who are the digital abstainers.
Mm.
I am like, let's embrace it, but embrace it with a system. Have this series of filters where new information doesn't come in and hit you right in the first brain, right? Just all day, every day, but it has like, it's almost like a little series of tubes. It's like a waiting area, which is your second brain, that stuff can rest for a minute. And then you can take your time and mindfully go through it and decide which parts you want to throw away, which parts you want to keep, which parts you want to absorb, right? It's like the difference between, like, the internet is like being out in a storm. You're out in the blizzard of just information. You're just stepping indoors so that you have a little bit of a protective barrier around you so you can decide what goes into your mind. That's the difference, right? It's up to you. You are taking control of your information diet. You are deciding what goes into this precious one mind that you have, instead of trusting an algorithm or some tech company to decide for you. But you're still taking advantage of it, and you're still cultivating and gathering the best parts of that content that you actually want to use.
Right. You're not even still in control. You're actually taking control.
Yes.
Right. That's the difference.
Yes.
Ah,
Exactly.
I love it. I'm going to move this along to another question, which again kind of puts you on the spot, but I love it. And you handle these so well. Y'all was asking, or sorry if I mispronounce your name, but what is the biggest flaw in your system?
Yeah, this is great. And I'm 100% transparent about this. So this has to do with how my system or my teachings compare with others. Okay. So if you look at everything that I teach, it is basically paper note-taking, just like ported over to digital. Okay. It's almost like we're in this transitionary phase where paper note-taking, you guys, is really good, right? Like there's a strong case to be made that paper is good enough. Paper's better. It's less distracting. It's more permanent. It actually is better for creativity. You can freeform sketch, you can draw, you can take it with you. Doesn't need charging, doesn't need Wi-Fi, right? Like there's a strong case to be made, right? But we're in this transitionary period where now digital note-taking is pretty good too. So we're like in this in-between phase, right? And in that transitionary period is where my content, where my teachings are, right? Like it's actually very telling that everything that I teach, the organizational system, progressive summarization, intermediate packets, all these core principles are just as applicable to paper as to digital, right? They apply equally to both. And this, let me come back around to answer the question. So I think in some years, I think it's going to take at least 5 to 10 years, digital note-taking is going to become better, right? Like any technology, the new version is still kind of like a baby. It's like a newborn. It's not very good yet. It's going to become way better. And when that happens in, I think, at least 5 to 10 years, there's probably a whole nother paradigm of note-taking that is gonna happen, right? Like a lot of it, if I had to guess, would have to do with machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? Like there's stuff that I teach you, bolding and highlighting and titling, that in 10 years, we will not have to do. There will be an artificial intelligence that will just like probably be like integrated into our brain, and we'll just like notice when we notice something, and we'll just like take a snapshot, and it will like be context aware. It will already know what it is. Like the history of note-taking is actually interesting. Every decade or two, one function gets automated, right? One task that humans had to do in the past, the technology takes over, and then we move on to something else. And then the tech takes over, and then we move on to something else, right? So it's almost like every paradigm of note-taking is only applicable for like 10 to 20 years.
So just to summarize, are you saying the biggest flaw in your system is it's not applicable for full cyborgs?
Yes.
Cool. Cool. No, but I love recognizing that too. I mean, even with Gmail now, it's like you barely have to write a full email if you're just
Yeah.
accepting that. So it's going to
Yeah.
be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
John, I would put that a little differently. I
yeah.
think another way of saying it is this program is not about finding the cutting edge of digital note taking,
Mm,
right? Like people are actually surprised. I've been using my stack for like a decade. And that is the value. I'm teaching you tools that are just like tried and true bread and butter. They're boring, right? Like all the sexy, trendy new apps that you see coming out on Twitter all the time. Like one day those will mature. In some years, those will be mature and boring, and that's when I'll get to them. I'm teaching you like a hammer and nail, like the most basic, fundamental, practical, predictable kinds of apps. And so I'd say if you're really interested in the technological frontier of knowledge management, this isn't the program for you.
right.
Right.
But usually with an Occam's razor approach, that means what you're teaching is also applicable to many different systems, which I
Exactly.
know I'm going to use that to transition to this is a question, but a lot of people were asking questions specific to like what note taking app, how does that work, all of that. And then Mike was asking, is Notion a big part of the course? Kind of transition, got a bunch more questions coming in about the course itself, but as far as the specific platform you're using for taking notes, or, people are concerned that they already have one, they're comfortable with all of that. Is what you're teaching really so specific to the platform, or can it be used across platforms?
So I'd say I'm glad someone asked that, because it is something I think that really sets our course apart. Is it's platform agnostic.
Mhm.
You can find courses on how to use Evernote, how to use Notion, how to use Obsidian, how to use Realm. There's so many out there. But I think what I'm trying to do is find the common ground, right? Like what are the, like I've kept repeating, these timeless pillars, these timeless principles. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to invest in something that's going to change tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to, I've been burned before, adopted some app, some social media thing, something or other that gets discontinued, acquired, closed down, or they start like selling your data, or that, something happens. And just all the time that I remember I used to spend, countless hours retitling songs in iTunes, right?
Yeah.
My iTunes music, I
Yeah.
would just like
Yeah.
ridiculously be retitling. And then one day, I think my database was corrupted or something, and I just lost like hundreds of hours of effort, of labor, right? And so I'm really trying to find that common ground that all software for managing information shares. And the best way to do that is seeing how other people use their software.
Mm.
So like with our examples and case studies, I personally use mostly Evernote, Notion, and Obsidian for different use cases. But the alumni mentors use probably half a dozen different other apps,
Mm.
right? And then the people in the course, we run a poll at the beginning of everyone. And I'd say there's at least 30 different note-taking apps that people are using. 30 different apps. Think about this. Like ones that you've never heard of, that are super obscure, or that are unique to academics, or unique to software developers, or unique to writers. And it's so fascinating that you can see how someone else uses one of these apps, and you don't even use that app, and you're not going to use that app, but you can still learn something.
Right.
Right? It's like watching, do you ever like watch someone in a different profession, like watch a plumber work or a carpenter, or watch someone play a sport, and you're like, oh, I just learned something about my field from their field. I love those moments, these cross-disciplinary connections. And you can only do that in a program like ours, where there's not like one app that everyone is using, but it's really about seeing the whole diversity.
Right. And so you mentioned the mentors just now, and there was a question about that. Are the mentors teaching you like how to use your systems to the best abilities, or just like you take the course and then you're left to your own devices? So what kind of like one-on-one help is available with the mentors, and where are you kind of left off to do it yourself?
Yeah, good question. We don't offer one-on-one help. The only one-on-one help is really in the executive edition with me. So I want to be clear on that expectation. But what we do have is, think of it like a conference, right? A conference is really the best metaphor. You have the keynote, which is the live sessions with me. right? It's at the beginning of the week. It's the biggest sort of virtual room, right? And what we do in the live session is try to sort of almost like harvest the energy of such a big group, right? There's a lot of things you can't do in a big group. It's not really good for like detailed, really going over the details of something. It's good for like getting people excited, going over like what we're going to learn today, what we're going to learn this week, right? Like hearing some stories, maybe a couple kind of big picture examples. And that is the live session at the beginning of the week on Tuesday. But then just like a conference, you don't want to spend the whole week in keynotes. Right. So we have breakout rooms. Think of the mentor sessions like breakout rooms, right? You see the conference agenda, right? And you see, oh, we have this person over here leading a breakout session on that very random, obscure topic. This breakout session on this, application of second brain techniques. This mentor session on for writers. This mentor session for Rome research, right? Like you choose your own adventure. You actually compile your own curriculum. That it might be different from everyone else's curriculum, right? And those calls can still be sizable, like dozens to maybe even 100 or more people. But because you have one subject, right, you can really like zoom into that subject and dive into that subject with that mentor who has prepared an entire, interactive session around that topic in a way that we can't do in the full group. And then the last sort of level is the student discussion forum. Right. And that's where you go in and you really choose your own adventure. Like I really try to encourage people to share what they're learning, right? In real time, not later when they have everything figured out, but as you're learning, as you take notes, post those notes and share them with other students. There's no better way to learn than to teach. And so the stuff that happens on the discussion forum, you just wouldn't believe. I mean, people start dating out of the discussion forum. One day there's going to be a second brain baby that is going to arise out of this. People meet up all the time. There's probably a meetup at least once a month somewhere in the world, and they're self-organized, right? You don't need to wait for us to organize it. You just we have dedicated threads in the circle forum, the discussion forum, for different countries, for different fields, for different professions, for different apps. So you just go in there, you join what's called the space, the thread, and then you receive notifications in that thread. You find your tribe, your little niche of people within the broader second brain community, and you guys can just nerd out in a way that no one else will even know what you're talking about, right?
Right. And so I'm also hearing too, though, that everyone who's in the cohort and the people around you are also like becoming mentors. So they're available to reach out if you need a little more help with a specific thing. And that's that community aspect too. That's helping you really, like Tara was saying, that's helping you get the most out of everything you're learning.
Exactly.
Love it.
That's really how I see it. I really think of the students in this course as peers. These are peers. These are people that I definitely learn more than I teach. Right. Like this isn't this one-way transmission of knowledge as if I have all the answers and I'm transmitting them to you. Right. No, we all have a piece of the puzzle. We are all professionals. We are all creative people. We are all experienced adults that have had a lot of wisdom in our lives. And so it's like we're all bringing our little piece of the puzzle and assembling something that is bigger than the sum of its parts, that's made out of the contributions of this stunningly diverse group of people. And honestly, that's what allows me to show up and not be nervous. Yeah. Right? I'm not here as this like authority. I'm just like I'm like the designer of an event. And the learning is not one way. It is multidimensional from many to many in a way that's really beautiful and really meaningful.
That's so cool. And so that leads wonderfully into this question, which was, then a few people were asking this, and you're so good at setting expectations, but if I can only watch recorded sessions due to time conflict, would it still make sense to sign up for this cohort or plan to sign up for future ones? So if someone really just in their life can't take advantage of all the like live sessions and stuff, do you still think it's worth purchasing the course and being part of this one?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say later tends to not be any different, like in general, right? Like there's just no magical time that things are going to clear up in general. Like in general, we get busier. We have more demands on our time. Our lives get more complex, not less. And so, in my role as a coach, I would ask you, and kind of doubling down on that theme of accountability, if I was going to hold you accountable as a coach, I would say, what do you have to move? Like, honestly, like people have had to make sacrifices. They have to get a babysitter. They have to take time off work. Like, I'm serious. Like, if you want a transformational outcome, anything worth doing is hard. Anything worth doing in this life requires a trade-off of some kind. What do you have to do? Do you have to get up early or stay up late? Do you have to ask your spouse to cover for you? Do you have to get a babysitter? Do you have to, listen to the audio on your phone as you're walking the dog? Right? Like, what kind of person do you have to become? Who do you have to show up as to make this thing happen? And just by becoming that person, you'll get a huge amount of value, because that skill of making something happen that you don't have enough time for, that you think you don't have enough time for, if you can learn that skill, you can do anything, right? Because most people out there are just waiting for something, waiting for time to open up, waiting for someone to give them an opportunity, waiting for them to have more money. It's just generally not going to happen. You have to make it happen. That's my honest answer as your potential coach.
Now you're just preaching, Tiago. I love it so much. We got just a couple more questions left, and then we got to wrap up for the day. But very practical question. Just a few people are asking this. If they start with the essential, can you move to other additions later? Is there any flexibility in that as far as like starting in one, getting the extra stuff later?
Nope.
Boom. Easy answer.
Here's what I would say. We've had a lot of people message us. Like, think of the essential edition not as like worse. Oh, it's like the not as good tier. The essential edition is just its own thing. And the fact that you can't join future cohorts, I'm really going to offer you, is one of its most important features. Right? Like, I've had people, like in the past, I've had people message me and say, like, let's say they had premium edition. They'd be like, hey, the fact that I can just always kick the can down the road and join some future cohort means I never do this. Like you failed in holding me accountable, because anything that can be done later is just going to never be done. Right. So, like, use the time limited nature of the essential edition as a feature, as its own benefit. No, there's not another time. No, you can't kick the can down the road. Right. And the one thing you do have is the recordings. Like, I don't actually want you to get up at 2 a.m. necessarily, although many people do. You have the recordings. That's enough. Okay. There's even something where, like, the future updates, and there are going to be many future updates, that's not going to make the difference. I'll just tell you right now. There's not going to be some future, oh, we added this module. Oh, and now it's just opened up this world to you. The bottleneck is not that. The bottleneck is not me telling you something that is going to somehow change something in your life. The bottleneck is action. It's always taking action. And the time limited nature of this course, I'd say, is really meant to activate that. It's like a deadline. When, like, you only do something when you have a deadline, when your boss is going to ask for it, when you have a meeting to present to the client. That power of that deadline is what I want for you by having there be a time limit to this course.
Right. Tiago, I think that's a wonderful place to wrap up for the day. I just wanted to thank you, everyone who's been here and asking such good questions and so involved. I want to remind you the link to the course is pinned to the top in the comments, and that'll take you. You can look at all 3 editions there. And Tiago, just to wrap up, I had one more question that's a little off kilter, but I'm so curious about. I'm wondering if you can choose one small way that you wouldn't expect in your life, in which maybe not even business related or any of that, but one small way that surprised you how this method has, like, affected your life or increased, a time when you were like, no kidding, that worked then.
Yeah, that's a great one. These are some of my favorite examples, because our personal lives are not separate from our professional lives. If you are worried about something from work, and you go home and you're, cycling through those worries all night long so that you can't be present with your family, there's no division, right? If your baby keeps you up all night and you can't sleep, you think you go into work the next day and that doesn't affect you? Like, human beings are one. We are one being, right? All parts affect all other parts. The example that comes to mind is my wife and I had our son, our first child, about a year and a half ago, and we needed to sleep train him. This was a great example, right? And so sleep training is one of those things where it's this challenge. It's a real challenge, right? Like months upon months of basically like extreme sleep deprivation. And people give you this advice. Everyone has advice, right? Oh, try this, try that, try this, try that. Or they give you books. In fact, I think I have the book right here. A bunch of people recommended this book, The Happy Sleeper.
Okay.
But think about this book. Okay.
When do you gotta read it?
When am I going to have the time to read this thing? And even if I read it, like maybe only 10 or 20% of it will apply to me, and 10 or 20% at different times, because there's things you do when they're 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Not to mention, I'm trying to do all this at like 20% brain capacity because I'm getting like 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night. Right? Like think how many situations in life are like this. You have a problem, the answers are out there. The answers are in books and videos and courses. They're there. You just have to match them. You just have to curate and structure the information in all those different sources so that it can actually be applied to that problem. And that's what I did. I read the book on my Kindle. I used code. I captured the parts that apply to us and that I found most useful and interesting. I organized them, right? So that in the middle of the night, when I'm holding this crying baby, I actually printed it on a single sheet of paper. So I could just have this one sheet of paper, right? Because I don't want this device with this bright light keeping up the baby or keeping up me. So I have one sheet of paper that I had to organize and I had to distill. And it's funny, you wouldn't think this would be expression, but it is. I'm expressing through my effort and my intentionality, my value that I want our entire family to sleep well, right? That has to do with health, has to do with work-life balance. Like, our son's brain development, it's really important that he get good sleep. I could make all those values manifest through something as simple as digital note-taking. And that to me is just as meaningful as any work-related, project.
I love that. Thank you for putting it into context in life in general. That's freaking beautiful. Tiago, thank you so much for your time. For everyone watching, please hop in the comments. Thank Tiago for his time and energy. If you had a good time here today, please like and subscribe to the Spotlight channel, consistently bringing folks like Tiago out here to help us all grow better and learn more about the ways we can accomplish all those many things we want to do in life. Tiago, before we wrap up, was there any other parting words you wanted to say? I know we got through a lot today.
No, just, if you liked what you heard today and these ideas resonate with you, and this community is one that you think you'd like to be a part of, I'd love to have you. There's no hard pitch. The doors are closing, but really we just have an open invitation to like-minded nerds and creators and artists and organizers like us to be a part of what we're doing, because it's really meaningful and it's really important in the world. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun.
Love it. On that note, have a wonderful day, Tiago. Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone, for coming out. We'll see
Really
you later.
appreciate it. And thanks for being here.